Everything I can do not to slap someone.
I know, and I'm like, it's pretty easy. It's 100%. And they're like, I'm like, it's 100%. I'm either 100% alive or 100% dead. I'm not, there's no odds, right? So if it's 1 in a million of survival and I'm the one, then I'm still 100% alive. So you got to be kidding me. But the fear thing for me was so real and still is.
Cue music. Places, everybody places. We're starting in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Autoimmune Hour, where we look at the rise of autoimmune disorders. I've brought together top experts that range from doctors, specialists, nutritionists, researchers, and even those recovering from autoimmune to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information about autoimmunity and how to live your life uninterrupted.
Thank you for joining us here on the Autoimmune Hour with Sharon Sayler. Always seek sound legal, medical, and or professional advice regarding any problems, conditions, and any of the recommendations you see, hear, or read here on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio. Join the Autoimmune Hour's Courage Club. Sign up now at understandingautoimmune.com. Now, back to your host, Sharon Sayler.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Autoimmune Hour for another brand new episode, and I'm really excited about this one. You guys have probably been on pins and needles, too. And I just wanted to say I'm Sharon Sayler from SharonSayler.com. So excited, I forgot to introduce myself. And you can find all of 470-plus episodes over at understandingautoimmune.com as well. And tonight we have BillCPotts back. Yes, we had him on at the beginning of the year, and he was just headed into surgery. So recently I reached out and I said, hey, what you doing? And when he popped on the screen this morning, he said he was just done playing tennis. So Bill is an incredible guy. Let me read his bio because it's just amazing. BillCPotts is a 5-time cancer survivor with cancer number 6 efforts currently underway. And he has had a successful business career. He is an Ironman athlete, as well as a dedicated father of 3, including twin girls. And he celebrated 32 years of marriage in the Bahamas with his remarkable wife, Kim, and they live in Florida. And his cancer journey spans 22 years as his lymphoma is incurable and keeps coming back. And then an incredible journey that he's had since then. As I said, 5-time cancer survivor. And when we last talked to him, he was just headed into surgery for cancer number 6. So I wanted to check in. I'm sure you do too. Hey, Bill, good seeing you.
Sharon, thank you for having me on again. I was excited to be on your show.
Oh, and I was so thrilled when I reached out with an email just saying, hey, Bill, how you doing? And you said, I'm up and I'm ready to go. So I was so surprised. Your resilience and your grit and your fortitude just leave me awestruck.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
Now, fill us in a little bit what you've been up to. Like I said, when we popped on the video here, you said, I'm just got in from playing tennis, which was not the answer I was expecting. Bravo.
Thank you. Part of my journey the last 22 years that has really made a big difference for me is my physical conditioning and being in good physical shape. So I'm in essence, sounds odd to say it, but I'm in essence training for when my lymphoma comes back. And so I seem to be able to know when it's time to ramp it back up. So I'm always working to make sure that when my lymphoma comes back, I'm in the best physical shape possible, because that has really made a big difference in my journey. And so after we spoke last time, I had a prostate surgery. And so I was out of commission for a while and just starting to get back into it. It was surprising in that a lot of the side effects that they were expecting me to have post-surgery, I didn't have. And I think that's a lot of it's because I'm younger than the average prostate surgery patient, number one. And number two, I had trained for it. So I was in really good shape going into it. So my recovery, albeit the first month was terrible, just sitting on the couch for a month, which would be hard for me. I've been able to bounce back pretty quickly. And so I'm really grateful for that. We can't say that the prostate cancer door has shut. I'll be back in 1 month and we'll confirm that, but we're all pretty confident that the prostate cancer journey is winding its way down, and we'll keep an eye on things as you do with all the cancers, but we'll get that one out of the way. And then I can focus on living life and staying in shape. If and when the lymphoma comes back, I'm ready for it.
Wow. Now, not all of us either can or aspire to be a Ironman triathlon. So, I'll say survivor of that too. I have friends who run it, and it sounds to or actually done it. It's the biking, swimming, and the running. It sounds absolutely grueling. What are some things that you tell other patients or people? Like I'm thinking, even with autoimmune, sometimes the fatigue is so bad, it's all I can do to go for a walk. You have tips on getting out there and staying at it?
I do because, I've been in that situation too, way too many times where I'm just too beat up from chemotherapy, immunotherapy, or surgery to be able to do too much. And so on those days when I really don't feel physically able to do stuff, I'll go sit outside in the sun. I call it vitamin D therapy. I get to hear the birds. I get to watch the butterflies. We have a very butterfly favorable backyard on purpose. So it's like a wildlife show in our backyard. So I sit out there. I also ground myself. I take my shoes off. I sit with my feet in the grass. Sometimes I'll just sit on the grass and connect with nature that way. I'll do deep breathing the best I can. And so I'll do all those things on days that I can't exercise, but I always try to push myself to at least get out a little bit, no matter how tired I am. And my doctors have encouraged me this. Sometimes I just have to try to push through the fatigue. And that might be literally taking the dog 5 houses down and turning around and come back. But that little bit really helps reset my mind. And for this show, one of the issues I continue to have is the immune system. And I go through ups and downs. My cancer of lymphoma is of the immune system. So at its best, my immune system is not great. And at its worst, which is going through the chemotherapy, I have none. And I've had to learn to adapt my life in a way to try to avoid getting sick. And my wife has been a great gatekeeper for people that come over, and they know now, but to make sure that they're healthy and safe. It wasn't too many months ago. The electrician comes over. We live in a 100-year-old house. So electrician comes over and I look at him and I can tell he's sick. So I just walked out the back door and said, my wife, you'll have to handle him. And we installed a Remy Halo system, hospital quality air purification system in our house. And I just have to be really careful. Like today, when I was playing tennis, one of the guys says, look, Bill, I am not well. I'm like, is it COVID? Is it the flu? What is it? He goes, it's some sort of cold. And so I made sure I stayed on the other side of the court from him and washed my hands when I finished. And luckily it was very windy today. Yeah, it's been interesting going on another direction, but living as an immunocompromised person it continues to be challenging, but I just adapt. I'm lucky I live in Florida, so I can eat most of my meals outside. That doesn't mean I always do, but I sure try to. My immune system now is at a base level, which would be not terrible, but not great. So I have a little bit more latitude when I travel now, which I am traveling on airplanes again. Finally, it's masked, and every time mask around people. If I go to a baseball game with the Rays and it's inside, if it's crowded, usually isn't. And when I go into the bathroom, I'll throw a mask on or whatever just to be safe. So yeah, it's an interesting life I lead, but it's become my normal. And my friends just know that and they just deal with it. And if they're sick, they just don't come over.
What's fascinating, it's reminding me during the time of COVID. And now when I throw on the mask to go into a public restroom or something like that, nobody gives me a second look. But when I
Yeah,
did pre-COVID, it was
sure.
everybody's like backing away and who's this strange person? In a way, I'm trying to find a few silver linings of that whole 3-year ongoing issue now. And majority of people are a little more understanding of what it is to be immune compromised.
Yeah, it's a huge difference from even a year into the pandemic when people would ask you, why are you having a mask on, right? Or telling you that you don't need it. And I think now I agree with you. I think most people accept that if somebody has a mask on, there's a reason for it. And I don't get any sort of pushback or funny looks. And I live here in Florida where there's a lot of old people. And so you see a lot more masks in the grocery store here than you might in a younger market. And it really is accepted. And I think that's the good news. And if we're going to eat somewhere and it looks like it's going to be busy inside, my wife or daughter will say, hey, go to the front and say, hey, he's immunocompromised. Can we have a seat outside? And 100% of the time, they're accommodating. There's no question. So they get it. So I think you're right. It took a while.
Took a
But
while, but and I was thinking about that the other day when I had to get on a plane and I put my mask on. And before there might have been a little pushback, but or a little weird looks or finger pointing, it just uncomfortableness. Now it's just nobody gave it a second thought.
Yeah, and I'm getting better at the types of mask. It took me the whole pandemic to figure this out, but from other cancer patients that I talk to, because I talk to them often because of my book, is I've got two different levels of mask. I've got, okay, this is going on an airplane at 3M 1870 plus mask is going to basically give me almost complete protection if I keep it on. And then I've got other levels of mask that I use depending on the risks that are more comfortable. But the 1870 plus, interestingly, which again I learned from a cancer patient, you can wear it for 6 to 8 hours and you can breathe fine. It doesn't restrict your breathing, but it gives you great protection. So you still get those dents on your face. It's the same ones they use in the ICU of COVID patients. And so now those are accessible on Amazon. They're not even expensive. So yeah, I always have masks with me. I got them in all the cars because you never know when you're gonna have to go in somewhere that makes you uncomfortable. And now I get, even with my family, they're like, are you sure? Yes or no? Now they know my radar is really good. And so far, I've been pretty fortunate in my decisions. It only takes one mistake, but so far, so good.
So far, so good. Now, you mentioned in passing your book. We talked about that last time we chatted. I love the book. Share the title and everything. Let's just do some shameless review.
Yeah, Up for the Fight, How to Advocate for Yourself as You Battle Cancer from a 5-time survivor. And the name Up for the Fight, it came up. I told this a little bit on my last podcast, but when I woke up on September 17th, 2020, from surgery to remove a cancerous tumor below my right hip, which was my fourth time with lymphoma, and it was pretty painful. And so when I got that out, I woke up, I had an emotional breakdown in the recovery room, which was happening during the pandemic. So I was by myself with Jen, the recovery room nurse, and long story short, it is a long story, but I told her that I wasn't up for the fight. And this was a full-fledged breakdown, full-fledged. And so she called the pastor in, and we reconnected with all the reasons why I should fight and that I shouldn't give up. It was quite the hour. And so I did. I reconnected with the reasons why I should fight and not give up, which was to fight for my family, to fight for my friends, to fight for my work, which was meaningful, and then to fight to make God proud, which was really amazing insight from the pastor. And so I was good up for the fight after about an hour and a half of conversation. And at the end of this whole thing, where I thought we were done, she leans in like this, right into my eyes, and says, "Now, Bill, I want you to turn your pain into purpose and write a book to help others." And that's what happened. And I was coming off of fentanyl and morphine, so I had pretty good reasons not to remember or not do it. But at my house, the Potts house, a deal's a deal. And honestly, I reached out to a publisher, and the CEO called me and said, "We want to do this book. We want to do a book like What to Expect When You're Expecting, but for cancer patients, because that book isn't out there." They'd done their homework on it. And the impact of that book on my life has been amazing because it gave me purpose while I was going through it. I wrote the book while I was going through chemotherapy, and I wrote it quickly because I wasn't sure I was going to survive, and I wanted to make sure I upheld my commitment to the pastor and to the publisher to get it done. So got it done 7 months before it even got published. But the impact that surprised me, Sharon, we talked a little bit about it last time, but it gives people hope.
Mm-hmm.
I did not see that coming. If I can beat it 5 times, if they're going through it for the first or second time, that gives them hope. And then also it's the feedback I'm getting directly from patients that read it, and I do talk with them all the time, is that it's giving them advice that will either change their journey, change their life, and in some cases save their life. And what better purpose in life can there be in that? So in a million years, I never would have guessed my life would go in this direction, that cancer would have a positive in my life. But it's had many positives, not just getting the book out there and helping people. And the book sales are actually going up in the second year versus going down. I've been lucky enough to get some good press, Daily Mail, Good RX, some pretty good international media on this thing. And that's really kept it going. And I think word of mouth is really working on it because the book works. And that's not from me. Of course, I wrote it. I'd say it's a good book, but it's from the people that are reading it that is making a difference. And all thanks to Pastor Tanya.
And a couple of things that came out in that conversation that we just had listening to, Bill, is the power of purpose and the power of community. And I find that really part of why I do the Autoimmune Hour too, As we had spoken in our last interview, the reason I do the Autoimmune Hour is my frustration with my care. And being a communication expert in my everyday life, I was like, if I have this much problem speaking and advocating for myself with the medical professionals and others, what is someone who doesn't have my training going through, who are feeling crummy and feeling fatigued and feeling too tired, not up for the fight? And so to me, the two commonalities here are the power of purpose and the power of community. I know you share other powers within. If you want to comment on purpose and community or dive into some of the other things that you discovered in sharing, because I think the thing about your book, not only hope, but it also says you're not alone. Your feelings are valid. You'll be okay. Express your feelings. There was so much in the book about sometimes when you start feeling, why me? And seeing that, oh, maybe an uncomfortable response, but it's perfectly normal. It's a sane response.
Yeah, it's true. The power of community makes such a difference. Now, interesting, what I have learned now, I'm lucky. My community reaches out to me from the book because I'm easily accessible. Early on in my journey, I was involved with some Facebook groups, particularly for cancer patients, and I'm still one that I actually is fantastic, is for immunocompromised people. But the cancer side got a little bit dark for me because so many of the stories weren't having happy endings, and so much of the information I was reading on the Facebook groups has been inaccurate. But one of the great communities that helped me so much was one on Facebook for people that are immune compromised. And so much so that that group helped me get Evusheld, which is the drug that is made for people that don't have an immune system to get you some protection from COVID. It's not approved anymore. There's a new one coming out. So when I went on that Facebook group and I'm like, guys, I have no immune system. Nobody else on the group did either. I'm like, where do you think I can get Evusheld? And somebody says, hey, they just got a shipment at this little small hospital in Ocala, Florida, which is like a 2-hour drive from me. And I'm like, you're kidding. And so I called the hospital and she goes, how did you find that we have this drug? And I said, from the Facebook group. She goes, okay, yes, we do have it. They had it in abundance, whereas nobody else had it. And that was going to be the difference for me getting any sort of protection for COVID, because the vaccines just wouldn't work and didn't work. And it's convalescent plasma donated by other people. So I basically am getting protection from other people's COVID. And so I go up there, drive up there, and I call and I'm like, I'm not coming in. I said, you're treating COVID patients right there. How can I come in and get a COVID protection if I got to walk through where there's COVID patients? And they're like, you're right. And so they took me around another area, came in a back door, put a shield on me. Of course, I had my mask on, sat in a room, did my thing, and went out the back door, so I didn't have to see anybody. But that group, that community was so helpful for me. And a lot of people in that group, their purpose then became helping people like me find this drug. And then that became my purpose. So I did a couple things. Number one, I'm on the horn with all these cancer patients that I'm dealing with saying, are they testing your lymphocytes? Are they testing your immune system, particularly the lymphocytes because of the COVID stuff, and to be in the T cells? Are they testing that? And if your levels are low, be careful. I had a friend die that was going through leukemia, and he passed away from COVID. He just didn't understand how beat up his immune system was, and the cancer didn't kill him, it was the COVID. And I'm like, oh, that should be preventable. So I'm calling everybody saying, mask up, be careful, get Evusheld if you can. So that community helped give me some purpose as well, and found it to be super helpful. And now my purpose, which has good sides and bad sides, because of the book, is the number of cancer patients that I'm talking to, and it can be a little draining. I had a call yesterday, a long call with somebody, and I came downstairs. My wife's like, how are you doing? I'm like, let's just not talk about it. Let me process it. So it's a dual-edged sword. But then back to some of the good things that have happened for me, being immunocompromised, being incurable cancer, is that it's changed my perspective on how to live. And it's like having to face the potential for dying. And I've been close a couple of times, has really opened my eyes on how to live. And we didn't talk about that too much last time, but it's I see it's like the colorblind person
Okay.
that puts on those glasses for the first time.
I've seen
And
those
all
videos where they're
yes,
yeah.
that's how I see. It's like I put those on and I see everything is in bright, vibrant colors, and I literally can hear the joy of kids playing down the street. I hear the birds, I see the butterflies, I feel the wind in my face. I just sense all that in a bigger way than I did before, and it's been so beautiful because I can be so much happier just being living in the moment versus worrying about the future. Like for me, why worry about it, right? I just need to enjoy each day and live in the present and live in the moment. And it's been remarkable. I also don't stress the small stuff so much like I used to. I'm like, people are like, I was some things will happen to me and they're like, aren't you mad? And I'm like, no, that's a small thing. So there's been some real benefits to having cancer. Might as well look on the bright side, but it really has changed how I live dramatically. My diet finally took me getting cancer 5 times and I fixed it. My exercise routine. These are all things that probably wouldn't be like they are if I wasn't dealing with what I'm dealing with on the cancer side.
That's amazing. Wow. Now, as you're talking to some of these people who are connecting with you through the book and what they've learned about being resilient, and I call it this real deep grit type of attitude and outlook, and yet with this really vulnerable side, it seems like to me, oftentimes trying to explain that to people, how resilience and grit and vulnerability actually are compatible. When people go, oh, you're either one or the other. Yet, Bill, you seem to effortlessly embody all three of them.
That's nice of you to say. I've got a lot of practice, that's for sure. And yeah, I'm just grateful. And part of what talking to these other cancer patients does is make me really, really grateful. And to a point that you made earlier, it's really not a fair playing field for the cancer patients. If you look at income levels, if you look at race, you look at some of these things, there's some distinct disadvantages for some people and advantages for others. I happen to be educated and have good insurance. I get it through the Affordable Care Act, like a lot of people, but it's good. And I match that to Mayo to make sure that I can get coverage there. But it's not cheap. And I feel bad for those people that A, don't know how to advocate for themselves, or B, don't have the financial resources to be able to manage the journey like I am. And it's kind of heart-wrenching to talk to some of these patients that don't advocate for themselves until maybe it's too late, or don't get a second opinion until the ship has sailed. And I also deal with a lot of patients that I just give them kudos for how they own their journey. But generally, those are type A people that, you know, that have been doing that in other areas of their life anyway. But for the folks that don't know to get a second opinion, or don't know how to ask for help, or don't know how to look things up on the internet, or don't understand what they're reading, it's tough. And when cancer rates are going up, and it's getting younger and younger and younger, and it's a big concern. And we spend so much time talking about the drugs and the treatments and so little time talking about prevention, that it really, honestly, it bothers me so much. If you just took exercise, weight, diet, smoking, and fix those 4 things, cancer would go down dramatically, and we're not doing it.
I think the thing is twofold. First, I want to say, I think you think it's never going to happen to you. I could internalize all of the different things until someone gave me an autoimmune diagnosis. I never really paid that much attention to it. Oh, yeah, I know what that is, but there's always a big but there. But it's not going to happen to me. But I thought I was eating healthy. No, I wasn't. I thought I was exercising. Yeah, sort of. It wasn't really with that commitment level that we need to really be intentional about our life. And I think living in the moment, as you said, is about an intentionality to our life instead of I'll get to it tomorrow type of thing. I noticed a lot of people always say yes, and they might cognitively understand, but there's just too many other things that they prioritize instead. Since your health is always with you when you're young, especially, I never paid that much attention to what it was to be like without health.
Yeah, yeah, same. The maturing process for all of us as we go through it. It's interesting because I get frustrated when I see somebody smoking because I'm like, I've dealt with a lot of lung cancer patients in my journey, and I'm like, you do not want to go through what they're going through. And thankfully, smoking rates are coming down. But then you look at the vaping issues with the teenagers, and I'm like, just want to shake them and say, do you know what you're doing to your lungs? You might not know, but trust me, you don't want to wind up at MD Anderson or Mayo or any of the cancer centers because it isn't fun.
I think the big thing when I talk to people about autoimmune, and I would extrapolate out to cancer, is when, especially during the first period of time, you're in shock, and then fear takes over. It's almost a fear to move forward, a fear to try something different. It's interesting that it becomes a freeze. Okay, I'm here and I'm still breathing. Yet there's a fear of, okay, I'm going to explore the different options. I'm going to talk to different people. I'm going to reach out. What if someone thinks I'm weak? Or I know that oftentimes I get calls from people who are worried they're going to lose their job because of their diagnosis. And so there's all these things about fear that keep us stuck from really seeking out a lot of help from, as we said, community and other common things. Even just reading a book sometimes, not your book's very uplifting, but a lot of things I was exposed to at the beginning were like, oh my gosh, they're just reinforcing all those scary statistics the doctors told me. I want to be on the high end of the winner side of the statistics, not all of the other, and realizing that you're not your statistics.
The numbers don't count. And I've been asked this question, and it's unbelievable, but I'm sure you've heard the question been asked, which is, what are your odds?
Oh,
And I'm like,
everything I did do not to slap someone.
I know. And I'm like, it's pretty easy. It's 100%. And they're like, I'm like, it's 100%. I'm either 100% alive or 100% dead. I'm not, there's no odds, right? So if it's 1 in a million of survival and I'm the one, then I'm still 100% alive. So you got to be kidding me. But the fear thing for me was so real and still is
Oh, yeah, mine's still real too. Yeah.
I mean, on getting sick, because a lot of your listeners, they'll relate, but people don't understand or they don't appreciate. I was going to a family reunion and I'm like, guys, you don't understand. I'm going to drive there, but I have got to be protected. And if you guys aren't feeling well or whatever, I need to know it and you need to not come. And the rule was broken and we had to leave. And I'm like, you're just not, and my wife said, don't be mad. They're not understanding that if you get COVID, your chance of living is literally 45%. So they're just not getting it. And I know it's still frustrating that people don't always get it, that don't respect the immunocompromised life that we have to live. And it's better because of the COVID awareness, but it's not where we need it to be.
No, it isn't. And although I want to flip side that a little bit, because I learned something the other day. You know how in life mentors drop little nuggets and all of a sudden someone else will drop a nugget and it all clicks and it all comes together?
Yeah.
Okay, this happened to me the other day. I was reading a post from a friend and they were saying that if you're frustrated, it's usually an unmet expectation. And I'm like, oh, that's wow. And then it took me back, 20 years when a mentor of mine said that anger is a secondary emotion. You have to be hurt, frightened, or frustrated to get angry. And I'm like, okay, so what if I'm hurt, frightened, or frustrated, and if an unmet expectation is frustration, it would also be hurt or frightened, right? Yeah, okay. So now I'm thinking of another mentor who told me, I love this. I'm just all these pieces come together. And this is over a period of years. Another mentor years ago told me about expectations. Learn to make your expectations preferences. It may not help the situation, but you'll feel more calm.
That's great
And
insight.
that's what I love about power of community and like our friendship. We just met in January and I feel like we're close friends now. And this type of thing where you learn these little nuggets from everybody. And
Mhm.
as you put them together, you're able to build, stronger support for your entire community. And that's what I love about our chats and everything. So where I'm going with this was in those moments where I'm upset, mine usually happens around holidays
Mhm.
and usually around food because I do have food allergies. And this one always gets me. A little gluten won't hurt. Just like, what? If someone who is allergic to bees, oh, a tiny bee sting won't hurt.
Mhm.
It's really seriously? Have you thought what you're saying? It's always this balance between, for me, trying to give myself grace and space, and then on the other side, trying to give them grace and space just for their ignorance about and their luck that they've never had to experience what somebody like you and I have to go through every day.
Yeah.
Decisions we
Yeah.
make every day, they don't even think are decisions.
Yeah. I'm getting there. It's work in progress. 'Cause
It's always a work. Maybe sound like I'm preaching here. I'm not, guys.
oh,
It's
yeah.
totally a work in progress. There are
But
times when my family will nudge me with an elbow if they see the frustration growing.
yeah. And by the way, back onto food, like buffets, I just won't do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not doing a buffet. I don't care where we are and how hungry I am, and because I'm not afraid of the food, but I don't want other people breathing on my food.
What's funny about that too is how uncomfortable everybody else is. I am fine going out with friends and having a cup of tea and enjoying the community, the conversation, and the time. And yet, I don't know how certain restaurants are going to prepare my meal, and many of
Yeah,
them don't even know what certain of my
yeah,
allergies are
sure.
and don't really care or take it seriously. So I'm fine. I'll just have a cup of tea. And yet, my close friends are cool with it. But it's funny when you get a larger group, how people get so anxious to help you when they're not really helping you if they just left you alone with your cup of tea.
Yeah, totally agree. Do you have to carry an EpiPen?
Yes, I do. I do.
I carry an EpiPen now, but it's for my dog. She's allergic to ants. She went into anaphylaxis a few weeks ago, and I literally carried her. The vet's 7 doors away, thankfully, from where we live, and ran her over there, and they saved her. But I'm like, wow, I carry around an EpiPen Junior for my dog. But I can't imagine what it's like to have that issue as a person, to always have that with you and not knowing how they're preparing food and having really zero margin for a mistake.
And a lot of people with autoimmune have environmental allergies as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
Walking to some mold, a mold-filled store that you didn't know.
Wow, that's hats off to you.
Oh, we all have our things that we have to learn to do, right?
Have you
And
had to use it?
no, I've been lucky. I haven't. They give you the tester kit all the time, and I've practiced the tester kit a few times.
Yeah.
I do know that it would just take a huge amount of courage to do it, though. Early in my immune recovery, I had to give myself shots.
Yeah.
And it would take 15 minutes to gather up the courage to
Yeah. It's like
actually.
jumping in a cold swimming pool.
Yes, exactly. Oh gosh, I have to do this one more time. And I feel so for diabetics and others that have to do that. You can really begin to relate when you experience it yourself. And luckily for me, I was able to move past that phase of my recovery, but have a whole new understanding and sympathy for all the fear that comes up. Even some people would call it irrational.
Yeah.
I don't think it's irrational. I think it's perfectly human to not
Sure.
want to stab yourself either with an EpiPen, because in an EpiPen, you're obviously working from time is of an
Yeah.
absolute essence. Luckily, I haven't had to, but I do love that they send that little tester with you. Also, because I taught some of my family members how to do it too.
Oh, smart.
Yeah.
Smart. In case you can't do it. That's smart.
I think the power of community and things like your book, were talking about your experience and so many other things you learned, as well as so many of the other guests sharing their tips and tricks and little things that they found out along the way. It does help calm a little bit of the fear of it all and not to be able to live in fear. And I've met many people with my experience, mostly around autoimmune, who do have what I'll say stuck in low level fight, flight, or freeze. They're
Mhm.
always in this sense of alarm. And I feel that could be possible with cancer patients as well, to make sure the environment's safe more than we would prior to our diagnosis.
That's true. It's remarkable the skills that we develop as immunocompromised patients. I can walk into a place and I can identify who's sick in 5 seconds. It blows the mind of my wife because she's like, yeah, how do you know this? We were at a resort in Colorado and we were eating our meals outside. This is in September. And so they were aware of my issue. And so they were great. And so we were there for 5 days. And at the end of the 5 days, one of the managers came over and goes, how's your trip? And did you feel comfortable? And I'm like, yeah, but you had two really sick people that were here while we were here. And he goes, who? So I said, that guy. So I told him, he goes, you're totally right. We had to call 911 on him. And he's had a lung infection or whatever. And I'm like, okay, who was number two? And I told him, and he's like, how do you know that? I'm like, I have to know it so I can stay away from them. I don't have a choice. I just know.
And that brings up this big part for me because I can't tell you how many times I knew my intuition was correct, either about something going on with myself or someone else. And to be able to trust yourself, to advocate for yourself and not let someone talk you out of it. Oh, you're being hysterical or you're overthinking. I've heard all of those things and you just know it's true, it's real. And each time that I listen to that little inner voice of mine, no. One time I had a medical professional and came highly recommended. But for whatever reason, I just didn't feel right. I was like, no, I can't go through this process with this particular professional. It just isn't right. And just so many things didn't add up in my mind. And finally, it took me a while. This wasn't instantaneous, everybody. Allow yourself some space and grace. I was seeing them. And then all of a sudden, I just, no, I can't do this anymore. There's absolutely something not right. And lo and behold, it was 10 days later, I found the ideal person who could help me with my condition. I felt safe. I felt like I was being heard. So trust your little spidey sense, everybody. I think it's really important. You may not know why, because I still don't know what it was about that other situation. I just knew every time I was in that situation, it wasn't right.
Yeah, good for you for recognizing it and making a decision on it and trusting that instinct.
I
Yeah.
wish I'd made it sooner, Bill. I think it lasted about 5 weeks or so. And I knew it the first week, but I kept trying to talk myself out of it. So that was the big thing for me is I learned trust myself. When my spidey sense says, something's not right. Okay, I may not know what's not right, but move on because something better is out there.
That's interesting because there's a parallel to that in how my life has changed because of my health issues, which is the things that I say no to and say to it confidently. And volunteering, I was volunteering at a homeless shelter and then get cancer again. I can never go back there, right? Because you talk about high risk from catching something, being inside with people that unfortunately are the unhoused. It's unfortunate that I can't do it, but the making decision to say no to that, but saying yes to helping other cancer patients and saying no to the committee where I don't have a real interest that I might have said yes before, but focusing my time on things that have a purpose or meaning to me. It's the same on a giving strategy, right? If you're going to give money away, where do you want to give it? And we have a plan on how we want to spend our time, like we have a plan for how we want to donate money to causes. I think I've learned how to say no a lot better.
Yes, and I want to encourage everybody. No is not a dirty word. And if someone else is not okay with your no, that's not your problem. That's their problem.
I also don't feel like I owe an explanation. No, just no.
Exactly.
I don't need to tell you why I know. Just no. It's been great because it's freed up time from things I wasn't really happy to do. And then you can spend time on stuff that has meaning. Yeah, I agree with you. The power to say no is the one that I had to learn, but it's made a big difference.
Yes. And I like yours that where no is a complete sentence. Too
Yeah, no.
often we'll rationalize or we'll maybe even make something up. I'm sorry, my schedule doesn't allow it, which just prolongs it because the next time they ask you, you have to say no again.
Oh yeah, I got invited to a birthday party next week, and it's going to be some costume party in some ballroom or whatever. And I just said, no, I can't make it. Let's leave it at that. Yeah, and I felt good about it because I don't need to give everybody an explanation for why I do or don't do things.
I think that's true for all of life. I want to point out that that's not just in our current situations of life. Wherever you are in life, you don't need to make rationalizations or excuses for the
Yeah,
way
fair point.
yeah.
The Autoimmune Hour will return after these messages from our sponsors. It's great sponsors like these that keep this show coming to you every week. Be sure and stop by understandingautoimmune.com to learn more.
Times TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
I want to make sure that we have time. Just anything that you would like to share that we haven't shared. And what are your aspirations? Are you writing another book?
That's a great question because I for sure have the content from it. And so the content for another book is really coming from all these other cancer patients because I'm learning as I go, right? I'm learning from them as they're learning from me, and it's been remarkable. But probably not. And so the reason no, first of all, it is a tremendous amount of work, and I think the current book is good enough that and sales are going up that there's no need to update it at this point. So maybe in the future, yes. But this is hard stuff to write about and talk about. And so I'm trying to each time I think I'm done with having doing a podcast like this or doing public speaking about my journey or writing an article about it or doing a blog about it, every time I say no, I'm done because it's hard to talk about. And I don't want to be known as, quote, the cancer guy. I want to be known for other things too. I'll hear from a patient or I'll do a podcast like this, hear from you. And I'm like, okay, I should continue to be doing this. So I'm going to hold the line and continue to do what I'm doing and promote the book and deal with cancer patients. I'm doing some consulting work in the healthcare space, in particular for cancer patients. So I want to try to lean into that. I think I'm trying to find kind of my next big purpose, and it's probably going to be healthcare related or cancer related, but it hasn't showed itself yet. But usually that's about the time something shows up. I'm not wired to play tennis all the time and work out all the time and that be fulfilling. That's just a part of my life. I really want to have a life that is living with purpose. And so the book is allowing me to do that. And my work is allowing me to do that. We'll see where it goes. So I don't know. If anybody has any ideas, reach out to me, bill@BillCPotts.com. But it's clear that to me, it's not about stuff. It's not about money. The secret sauce for me for happiness is helping others. And so how I do that, I don't know. I was talking to a big nonprofit that I was going to do some work with, and the onboarding was so bad, even though this is a big, well-known organization, that I called them. I'm like, this isn't going to work. I can't work at this badness level. It's going to bring me down, not bring me up. So finding those things to do, I don't know, Sharon. I'm open to ideas. Maybe this is one reason for the podcast. Somebody will suggest something. What's that?
Absolutely. Because some of the things that came to my mind when I asked about the second book and you said, maybe not. I'll tell you, every time I write a book, I close it, and then within a short period of time, oh, I wish I added that to the book, or I wish I added that to the book. So I love that you're keeping the option as an option, you
Yeah,
know.
because you never know when Pastor Tanya will call me and say, now you got to do another book. And so I guess I'd have to do it. I'm going to go through. I got my cancer will come back, and this drives my wife crazy because she goes, "Why don't you say if it's going to come back?" I'm like, "That's not how this one works, but we can feel good about it and say that, but it will." And I think once I get through number 7 or 8 or 9, there'll probably be another book in there. And though there should be, because it'll be a whole new set of learning. And by the way, things are advancing pretty well in the cancer care world. Honestly, some cancers are good, some are great, and some are terrible on how the treatment's progressing. So there's a lot of room to roam on things getting better. I still think we really haven't hit the wheelhouse of how to deal with it. And the idea of getting chemotherapy just seems so old school. My chance of surviving each chemotherapy I went to was by chance of dying during each chemotherapy was 3%. That was from the data. And people don't particularly understand the seriousness of chemotherapy and the side effects that they create, some permanent, some not, that there's going to be some breakthroughs. They're working on it. And I'm involved with some of that too, because I'm talking to all these people because of the book, that I'm super encouraged about the future of cancer care. I'm super encouraged about the plight of the immune compromised, because there's another drug already about to be approved by the FDA for COVID, like it was for Evusheld. So I'm encouraged by all that, but I'm also, it can't go fast enough. And I say the longer I live, the longer I will live. And if anybody's rooting for quick advances in treatments, it's people with cancer or people like me with incurable cancer. And if I can stay in remission, I thought it would be, if I could get 3 to 5 years, so there'd be enough advancements where it would improve the math of my next round of it. Probably going to need a little bit more than that. So my goal too, my number one goal is to try to stay as healthy as I can. I'm ready when it comes back, and I can hopefully, through all that delay, it coming back, which is a balance, right? So I'm not going to ever do another Ironman race, because that beats up the immune system, doesn't strengthen it, right? It's too much for the body. I'm not going to do a lot of heavy cycling anymore because I have issues. That's not very comfortable. I'm going to do running, but I won't do any more. I won't do a marathon again, because again, it beats up the immune system, whereas a half marathon probably strengthens it. So changing everything on how I live, but moderation, and part of it's aging too, but it seems to make a lot more sense.
It does make a lot of sense. And one of the things I wanted to circle back on was the comments about how fast certain medical advances are happening. And I noticed that in specific fields of the autoimmune as well. I think cancer treatments and autoimmune treatments go somewhat hand in hand. There's a lot of understanding of the immune system that plays into both of
Oh,
those,
big time. Yeah.
both of those therapies. Yeah, the part that I still want to bring out from the Autoimmune Hour is the power of friends, the power of community, the power of being okay with yourself, the power of loving yourself. All of those things play into the healing process too, especially the power of community and people that are like, such as yourself, willing to, I'll say a stranger willing to take a phone call and listen to someone who's really having a tough time.
That's the value of your podcast, right? Is that community. People don't feel alone. And yeah, cancer patients or autoimmune patients should never feel alone. People like you, right? I'm sure for me, it was hard during COVID going through treatment, because I didn't have a lot of socialization face to face, almost none for 2 years. But through things like this and online communities, and phone calls was really helpful.
Just a quick aside about the face-to-face. I had 3 medical professionals that I met during the time when everybody was wearing masks, especially in medical situations. And I never knew what they looked like below their eyes.
Mm.
Well, it was the most disarming and enchanting time, the first time you see someone's whole face.
That's true.
Oh my gosh. One was like, I didn't think that's in my mind. I didn't think that's what, your nose and mouth would look like.
Mm.
Not in a bad way. It was just like somehow in my mind, I had a different rest of their face. It
You're
was so-
hoping it was George Clooney, and it wasn't.
no, they're perfectly beautiful, but it was just like, why did I have this different impression? And I'm sure the same for me with some medical professionals only seeing your nose and then everything below your neck. It's kind of like, who is this person? The connection of smile, the connection of all of those sorts of things that we were missing out. So that for me really brought home to continue to focus on building community and knowing that there are others who can understand what you're going through. And for me, I found it was really helpful just finding most of the times people don't have the answers, but just, I like to say, confirm my sanity. No, what you're going through, your fear is perfectly normal. What you're going through, the vulnerability that's normal. People do that. And it's nice to have someone else confirm your sanity from time to time.
Yeah, and it helps. And I've promised this blog to write it for some healthcare company, but I haven't written it yet because I'm having a hard time writing it. But is the impact of loneliness, your health diagnosis, and how it can get pretty lonely.
Mhm.
To this point, when I told my wife I'm thinking about writing this article, and she goes, "What do you mean lonely?" You and I'm like, it's lonely. It's lonely having an autoimmune disease sometimes, and it's for sure lonely being a cancer patient. I don't know how particularly it is in the world of the autoimmune piece, but in the cancer world, a lot of people disappear when you're diagnosed with cancer.
Mhm.
And for me, obviously, being largely alone outside of my wife and dog for a long time, it's lonely. It's lonely that people don't seem to understand what you're going through. You feel like you're on your own. And the online communities were helpful to a point, but the face to face is the difference maker for me is that socialization. And it's pretty lonely for a while. And I have to deal with loneliness when you're going through a health issue. I don't know the answer, which is probably right. I haven't written that blog yet.
A couple of things came to mind, Bill. What I found fascinating was even within your family, you can feel lonely because
Sure.
maybe they're trying to cheer you up, or who knows, but they're just unmet expectations, regrets, all sorts of things can come up. Some fears from the other parties. Oh, I'm afraid to, I went out shopping today. Maybe I shouldn't be close to you for the next 24 hours or whatever it is. It can be an incredibly lonely and vulnerable time. If they haven't walked in your shoes, it's really fascinating to me that people don't understand the amount of how lonely it can feel when they don't understand why you can't have that cupcake.
Yeah, for sure.
We're just about out of time to share where to get the book and any final thoughts. It's so good to catch up with you, Bill, and bravo for you made it through number 6 and you're looking good. And I was so thrilled that you were out playing tennis.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Yeah, it was lucky. I'm super lucky and super grateful, and I'm so glad that you reached back out to me. That means a lot. And just having this conversation with you is makes my day, and I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you, Bill. I just fell in love when we had our first meetings and our conversation. So where does everybody get the book that we've been teasing everybody with? Where can they find
Yeah,
it?
yeah. Anywhere books are sold, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Target.com. But obviously, most people are buying their books on Amazon, and I got a lot of reviews on there. And if you don't need it for yourself, and hopefully your listeners never need to buy it, but most of us know a friend or family that's been through it or going through it or will go through it. It's a good book. It's a gift. I'm finding that so many of these books are being provided as gifts to cancer patients, and it's written easy to read. It's not super long. It's meant to take notes in it. It's got checklists, things like that. It's 100% going to be helpful for anybody going through the cancer journey, and even those friends and family of those going through the journey. There's a chapter written by my family to coach the families that cancer patients had to go through it too. Yeah, I'm grateful for this opportunity to talk about it with you.
Okay. And it's BillCPotts.com is your website if they want to find out more,
Yes.
right?
Yep. Yep. A lot of pictures on there. You can see my family and my sweet little dog Pippa.
Yeah, she's a cutie.
Mm,
So
adorable.
everyone, have a great week, whatever your adventures, and join me next week for another brand new episode. And thank you so much, Bill. And we'll check in later and see how you're continuing to do, because I always love your insights.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you next week.
The information provided on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, including the websites understandingautoimmune.com and lifeinterruptedradio.com, plus social media, is for educational purposes only. What you read, hear, and see on the Autoimmune Hour, Understanding Autoimmune, and Life Interrupted Radio, and its websites, and other media outlets is based on experience only. The information should never be used for any legal, diagnostic, or treatment purposes.